And the next presentation, I think, Sherlyn, VSJ, Lynn, you're.
I'm almost ready to start us off.
I'm here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
So Sherilyn, you want to go ahead?
I can't. I'm having issues, believe it or not. So I just got back in. So let's see. Not doing it for me. You may want to start first.
Okay. This presentation really interested me because our friends are going to be talking about the development of the North Texas affiliate, and they developed from a group of people who were looking mainly at EFL for adults. Now they've moved slowly into the K through 12 area. And if you read the account, I'm not going to read the whole account for you. I think, shall we go straight into their presentation for us to see how they've developed and what they do these days?
We can, but just so they know, they had officially was founded in February of 1979 at the University of North Texas. And there actually we have conversations that will be maintain the affiliates of how the K through 12 partnerships will form, and also scholarships that were awarded $1,000 for 4 people, if I'm not mistaken. They can correct me if I'm wrong, for graduating high school seniors. So we're really excited to hear from Ms. Welch, Dr. Welch, and Dr. Patton.
Thank you. We're excited to share with you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Are we hearing okay? All right. Well, yeah, we're from TESOL 5, and we want to talk to you about how we have widened our circle to include more K-12 educators as a part of our affiliate, and how we've developed those partnerships, and then ultimately how we were able to leverage that into a scholarship program that we're able to fund scholarships every year to high school seniors. So our presentation today is by myself. I'm Katie Welch, and my colleague Mary Patton is with me on the line, and we serve as, I'm past president and Mary is president of TESOL 5. And this was a picture of us after our last conference. We were joking that we need to start taking pictures of ourselves at the beginning of the day instead of the end of the day when we're not so tired after doing lots of conference planning and hosting. But this was us, and we are excited to talk with you guys today. I want to just give you a little background about TESOL 5. So we are located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And if you know Texas, it's quite large, and it's kind of known for being large. And so we actually have 5 different TESOL affiliates in Texas. And so when we're TESOL V, the V is a Roman numeral that stands for 5. And so we are that northmost region, which is the Dallas-Fort Worth area and surrounding. But we also have region 2, 3, and 4 that are active in Texas currently. And each has their own separate board. Region 1 that you see over on the left is dormant currently, so they're not an active affiliate. So while we have 5, there's technically 4 that are active. We were very excited last year to celebrate our 40th anniversary as an affiliate. We started in 1979, and so 2019 was our 40th birthday. And back in 1979, when our affiliate was founded, of course, even back then, ESL or TESOL has never been a monolith. That is, that there's always been many different stakeholders that are attached to the umbrella term TESOL. So we have English as a foreign language, we have English as a second language, we have English for specific purposes, we have bilingual education. So there's many different stakeholders that are a part of TESOL. But in 1979, when our affiliate was founded, the focus was really on teachers of adult learners. And so as we got started, that was really where we emphasized, that was who our membership was teachers who taught adults. But because of the rapidly changing demographics of Texas, as well as other factors, it became very apparent early on in the 1980s that we needed to think a little bit more broadly about who our affiliate could service. And so starting in the late 1980s, we began to really focus a lot on K-12 education. So I want to talk to you a little bit briefly about why is that, just in our context in Texas, why would K-12 ed and ESL be important to our affiliate? And so I want to just give you some numbers just so you can just get a general sense of the demographics of our state. In the 1980s, when our affiliate realized that we needed to be more mindful of K-12 teachers, at that point, 7% of Texas students were ESL or bilingual. Today, the last numbers that we have are from 2017, 2018, 19% of students are ESL or bilingual. So we have, that's 1 in 5 of every student in public schools in the state of Texas is going to be an English learner, classified as such. And so even back then in the 1980s, we had quite a few, but even more so today. Currently, we have about over 1 million students who are designated as English learners. And so this is due to a number of factors, but largely due to immigration. And so Texas right now, 1 out of 3 Texas residents is either an immigrant or has at least 1 immigrant parent. So we have a heavy immigrant population, and so it makes sense that we would have a lot of immigrant children in our K-12 system. Likewise, there was a really important Supreme Court ruling in 1982, Plyer versus Doe, that said that states cannot constitutionally deny a student free access to public education, even depending on their immigration status. So it doesn't matter if they are a naturalized citizen or not. Every child in the state of Texas has a right to a free public education. So in Texas, given that we have so many immigrants, many of them come from Mexico because we border Mexico to the south, and so 51% are going to be from Mexico. The next highest percentage of immigrants is from India with 6%, then El Salvador with 5%, Vietnam with 4%, Honduras with 3%, and then the other is many, many other countries, but all with less than 3% of making up that piece of the pie. Interestingly though, even though we have so many immigrants, of those 1 million learners who are classified as English learners, 75% of them were actually born in the United States. So they're not necessarily newcomers, but they are classified as English learners. And the reason why is that in our K-12 system in Texas, every parent is asked to fill out a home language survey. And when they fill out this survey, they have to identify, you can see down here at the bottom, what language is spoken in your home most of the time, and what language does your child speak most of the time. And so if any language other than English is put in either of those blanks, then automatically the public school system is going to, it's going to set off a chain reaction where the public school system needs to assess those students to determine if they're English learners. And so even if you have a child who was born in the US, but maybe they speak Spanish and English in their home, just by putting both of those languages down on the form means that now that child will need to be assessed to see if they're an English learner. So we end up with a very large amount of English learners in our public school systems. And so part of why our affiliate needed to be more mindful of K-12 was just because we have these changing demographics that we just can't ignore. And then another important shift happened, especially in the past 15 years or so, in terms of how the public school system, our Texas Education Administration, how they are believing that we should best educate English learners. And so I want to talk just a little bit about that. As I mentioned, the students get a home language survey, the parents identify what language is spoken in the home, and then the students are assessed. But after that, there's kind of two funnels that students can go through if they're designated an English learner. One would be that they would be recommended for a bilingual program. And we have many bilingual programs in the state of Texas. And so these types of programs are going to use the home language as part of the instructional setting. And so you'll have some content areas that are taught in Spanish and some taught in English, with the ultimate goal of learning English, but and another goal of maintaining that home language, but they're taught in this bilingual setting. Not every English learner is going to fall into a bilingual program because they may speak a language where the bilingual program isn't offered. Most of our bilingual programs are Spanish and English, but you do see some Vietnamese and English, but beyond that, generally any other language is not going to fall into the bilingual category. Also, some school districts aren't large enough to have a bilingual program, and bilingual programs are generally only K through 4, 4th grade, or K through 6, 6th grade. So beyond that, in middle and high school, you're not going to see those as much either. In terms of professional organizations that bilingual educators are affiliated with, we have a Texas Association of Bilingual Education, and most of our bilingual ed professionals are going to belong to this, and that's where they're going to get their professional development. We also have in New Mexico, which is a bordering state, something called dual language education, which offers a professional development called La Cosecha. And so we see a lot of our bilingual educators going there for their professional development. You might remember when I was talking about us being Text TESOL 5, that we had Region 1 that is currently inactive. Part of that is because Region 1 is bordering Mexico and is also bordering New Mexico. And so you have a lot of bilingual programs in Region 1, and you also have a lot of those teachers going over to New Mexico for their professional development. But there's also another path, and that is that instead of going to bilingual education, that students may be identified as going into ESL education. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that, because this is really where our affiliate, Text TESOL 5, fits into this story. So in Texas, there's 2 approved instructional models for ESL. There's content-based and pull-out. And so pull-out is the idea that you're taking all the English learners, pulling them out of the classroom and putting them in their own classroom. You typically only see that these days with newcomers. It used to be that any level, any proficiency level, was a pull-out for ESL. But there's been a shift in instructional beliefs in Texas, and that is that we want to try to keep English learners in their classrooms as much as possible and not pulling them out. And so instead, what is largely recommended is that students are in a push-in environment, which is also called a content-based environment. And this is where you have English learners mixed in with the general population. Because of this shift, we need a lot more ESL certified teachers. When they were pull-out, you only needed so many ESL teachers because you were putting all of the English learners together. But now that we have them kind of dispersed amongst general education classrooms, we need many, many more ESL certified K-12 teachers. And in fact, anyone that has an English learner in their classroom needs to be ESL certified. And given that we have over 1 million English learners, that means many teachers need that certification. It's not required yet in the state of Texas, but it's definitely becoming an area of emphasis for sure. You also see this kind of ideology coming along with this content-based education, this push-in model, that all teachers are language teachers. And so it doesn't matter if you're a science teacher, an art teacher, math teacher, the PE teacher, that if you have an English learner in your class, then you need to not only be thinking about your content, but also thinking about language acquisition and development within your content. And so again, this means that there are many teachers that are needing good quality professional development with how to work with English learners. And so this is where we fit in. And this is kind of what we've seen, is that this is a need in our state, is to provide high quality programs for K-12 teachers. Of course, the state takes care, you know, we have different service centers that are going to provide some of that. We have privately owned groups that are going to provide professional development. But in terms of a professional organization for teachers to be involved in, TESOL makes the most sense. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Mary, who's going to talk to you about specifically how did we as an affiliate take this information, this demographic information, and this changing idea about who is an English language teacher, and then implement into our own affiliates so that we could bring those educators into the fold.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, can you see what I'm sharing? Hopefully, yes. Okay, so thank you, Katie, for giving us the background information on K through 12. So I'm going to talk about what we've done because of that, which our affiliate, even in Texas, we're a little unique. Not all of the affiliates in Texas have to or need to or are necessarily catering to the K through 12, but in our region, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and beyond, this is a huge population of teachers that need servicing. So this is kind of our major membership goes here. So I'm going to be talking about our interest sections, our conference planning, and then our scholarships. Okay, so our interest sections, because of who our members are and the teachers within that we need to service, we have 3 interest sections that we have. So we have divided up elementary education, secondary education, and then we have combined higher ed and adult education. And to be in these interest sections, you could be in all or you could be in any. You would decide which ones you want to be part of. But in order to be the leader of the interest sections, you have to come from this background. So we wouldn't want somebody who's only been doing higher ed to be the leader of our elementary ed interest sections. So we do have these 3 positions on our board, and we do consider our interest sections leaders full board members. They attend every board meeting that anybody else on our board would attend, and they have equal voting rights as everybody else. So we give them full power on our board because we really care a lot about what they have to say. And so within the interest sections, we do have some goals that we're shooting for each one. One is that they help us determine which conference sessions we should choose. We want to make sure that there's equal pairing, or at least something for everybody to go to during each timing of our sessions, and as something that they are interested in. So we don't want to have all of our elementary education sessions at the 9 o'clock slot. We want to spread them out and make sure that it's things that are relevant and interesting to people within those interest sections. Myself, I'm a higher ed person, so I might not necessarily know what's really interesting to the elementary ed person right now. Some of it's going to be similar, but there are things that are different. So we go to our interest sections leaders to give us that information. And then also annually at our conference, we do have sessions where the goal is that they would come together and discuss and get to know each other in more of a face-to-face atmosphere besides emails or discussion forums that we might be doing. So that's the next thing is that we always aim to do, is to send out some different emails to talk about whatever's happening in the field or whatever laws are being passed or things that are being interested in. If people have questions, help with something on their lesson planning, whatever they need help with, this would be a place for them to go for help. We definitely want to be that resource for our members. And then also for recommendations, our interest section leaders help give us one voice. You see Be the Voices next. They help give a voice to the members that they're leading, but it also helps to give a voice to that interest section within our board. So when we have open membership in our board, they would help to give some recommendations. Shortly, I'm going to show you a slide that shows you the layout of our membership of who attends our conferences. And based on that, we do have, we try to keep our board pretty evenly split between K through 12 and between higher ed. So when somebody from a K through 12 environment might rotate off, we try to have somebody from K through 12 on, or at least keep the balance within there. We don't want to have our board of like 8, we have 15 on our board. So we don't want to have 8 higher ed and only, or that would be fine because that's 50-50, sorry. Math, not my strong suit. 10 higher ed and only 5 K through 12, that wouldn't be excellent for our area. So we try to keep it as even as possible. And so they help to make sure that the representation is appearing within our board without anything that needs to be raised within their areas. We ask them questions for our advocacy stuff. What's happening? What do we need to be doing? So they really help us to keep our hand on what's happening and the knowledge for that. Okay, so then conference planning is the next thing. What we do, this is our big professional development area that we offer, is our conference planning. So we have an annual conference that we do with Texas. We're a little different than other affiliates where we have the 5 areas. And so we have our big state conference that we rotate between the 4 active affiliates. And then when you're not hosting the state conference, you would be doing your regional annual conference. So that's the one, what I'm going to be talking about is our regional annual conference. And so that's their big thing that we offer every year for our members. And so here is what I was talking about, where it's our attendees by population served. This is from our last conference. Our last conference was in February of this year. And so you can see that 52% of our population was K through 12. And you can see the breakdown of elementary, secondary, and then there are people who designate elementary and secondary as their population. So 52% is huge. That's over half, obviously. And then our next highest one is university and college, which would be our adult ed or higher ed. So we really need to make sure that the voices are being heard from our interest section, since that is majority of our population. So this is just an interesting slide that we will show you more of what we're talking about. Okay, so because of that, we want it to be, again, representative of what people want to know. So we have used an app called SKED in the past to be our program app. This year, when we're planning our conference for February, again, we haven't made finalized decisions yet, but we are planning currently for in-person, leaning towards online because that's where we seem to be headed with everything that's happening. So, but we use our SKED app, and what we really like about SKED with our program is that it allows us to filter by type of session. So it's color-coded, you can see here on the left side of the screen, that we can designate what each session is for. And so people can go in and they say, okay, I want to see whatever's for elementary education. And they can filter all of the sessions by that. And it's very easy for them to just kind of tune out the ones that they don't necessarily need to focus on. Now, there are things that are going to overlap, and so they wouldn't necessarily want to always tune out the other areas, but it really helps you to focus and hone in on the areas that you really want to be a part of. So this has been very useful for us. SKED does cost money, it's not free, but they do have a nonprofit discount, and it's with the discount, I believe last year it was $250. So it's not that expensive, it's totally worth it. And you can make your changes day of, whatever you need to be happening on the app, and our attendees really have enjoyed it. Okay, so there are some important factors to consider when you are planning a conference. Especially when you're catering kind of to a K through 12 audience. So we do want to, again, make sure that representation is there. With 52% of our attendees being K through 12, we don't want to have only college or university type presentations. So we really want to make sure that we have representation for everybody. We do have the large K through 12, but we do want to make sure college and university professors or instructors still have something that they can go to. We also recently have added poster sessions to our conference to make sure that even the graduate students in our area have something that they can present on and be part of our conference. We really want to make sure that they can be there. The other thing that you need to make sure is marketing and email blasts. Make sure you're getting it out there where you need to. So by attending our conference, then we have your email, we'll send you out the information, but we also give it to our interest sections leaders who would disseminate that to their members and anyone that they need to feel, that they feel would be learning something from what we have. And then our vendors are very, very useful to us. They come from a wide variety of backgrounds, but they also help us to offset some of our costs. Probably anybody who's been planning their conference knows this. The vendors are very, very important to help, and they can help by sponsoring a keynote, giving you featured speakers so that you don't have to be paying out of your pocket for those types of things. And having vendors that your local members are going to want to go to and to buy things from them will keep the vendors coming back. And that's what's important. We have some really good relationship with a lot of our vendors because they've been coming year after year, and they know our marketing representative, and they have a really good relationship together. And they'll donate like little giveaway things if you ask them nicely. And so they're a really good part of our conference. And then the next thing is the keynote and featured speakers. We want to make sure that we are inviting people to speak that all of our members can learn from, but we always want to make sure that it can cater to the instructor in the classroom. Make sure that whatever they're talking about caters to that. So this year, our keynote speaker is going to be somebody from our local Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then our featured speaker is somebody from New York TESOL, who talks about whiteness and language usage in the English learning atmosphere. So we try to make it something relevant and things that everybody can kind of be a part of. We don't want it to just be something that only the K through 12s are only interested in, or only higher ed. We do talk it over with our board and make sure that everybody's on board and thinks this would be a good idea. The other thing is that our conference counts for CPE credits. CPE means continuing professional education credits, and those are something that is offered by the, or deemed correct by the Texas Education Agency. They're the educational board in our state. And teachers have to renew their certification every 5 years, and to do that, they have to have a specific amount of hours, or these credits. So they have to have 150 hours over 5 years. It's about 30 a year. And our conference counts for this. We are approved by the Texas Education Agency to hand these out. And our conference is 6 of these every year. So it's very well known in our area because we've been doing this for so long. K through 12 members know that they're going to be getting these credits when they come. And so they kind of plan on it, and they get their schools to pay their way for coming. And we work really well with the school districts. Often when you work with K through 12 school districts, if you don't, you're not going to know this necessarily, but they don't pay you right away. You have to wait, usually several months, to get your payment from them. So you have to kind of be patient and send little reminders sometimes to them. So because we've been doing this for a while, we know this and we expect this. And so you don't get all of your money from your conference right away. You have to wait longer. Where in the college and university atmosphere, if the college pays for it, they pretty much send a check immediately. Otherwise, the individual instructor will be paying for it, and then they get reimbursed later. So those funds usually come quicker than you would for your independent school districts coming. And then the next thing you need to consider is timing and costs. We never want our conference to be too expensive, because then it won't attract the members that we have. And we want it to be at a time where our membership can come. So because 52% of our membership are K through 12 instructors, or in the K through 12 environment, we have found that having it on a Saturday is the best time to have our conference. It's a one-day conference for our annual conference, and so having it on a Friday from about 8 to 5 is the best. We get the most people that way. If we had it during the week, we wouldn't get as many people attending. And we keep costs low by inviting our vendors and trying to get keynote and featured speakers through our vendors and having them sponsor these for us. And so that helps us to keep our costs low for our membership. And then we provide the complimentary meals, the breakfast and the lunch for them. And so usually we charge $60 is our rate unless you miss our advanced registration, and then it goes up, not a lot, like $7 to $75. But for students, anyone who's going to school full-time, we have discounted rates. We have retired teacher rates. So we try to do as much as we can to make sure that we get and we're able to service as many people as we can in our area. Okay, so then all of this is said because it helps us to do our scholarships, which is really our huge giving back to the community. This is the thing we really want to do. We've had discussions on if we want to do more of these, but right now this is what we are doing. We do 4 $1,000 scholarships to high school seniors who will be entering college or university. They must have been designated as an ELL or ESL at some point during their K-12 career. Okay, they don't have to be necessarily in it at that moment, but at some point during the career, they have to have been an English language learner. And so every year we do 4. Here are our 4 people that we did this year. We don't just pick randomly. There is a method that we use for this. But these are our 4, and we are very grateful to be able to support them in their learning and what they are doing. Past winners you can find on our website if you're interested, texttesolv.org, but these are our current ones from 2020. And a little bit about what our scholarships are. We use Forms Plus and pair that with Google Forms. That helps us to keep all of our information kind of in one spot so that we can easily sort it however we need to and make sure that all of the submissions have everything that we need to do this. So they have to supply demographic information, who they are, what their GPA is, their school that they attend and the counselor's name, what school they're hoping to attend for university or college. And then they also have to give 2 letters of reference, supply their transcripts, and then submit a personal essay. This year, with the schools not being closed but having to do remote learning, we had to be a lot more flexible than we might have had to be in the past with this. But this is generally what they are asked to give us. And then with the personal essay, that's kind of the big thing that we're looking at, because most of the people who submit this have pretty good grades. They get fairly high accolades in their letters of reference. So we look very deeply at their personal essay. And they're asked 2 different questions. They can pick one. So you can see them on your screen here. One is to talk about a challenge that they had, how they addressed it, and then how that helped shape them as a person. Or they can talk about a meaningful achievement and how that will help them in their future. So this is what they're given to work with. They come up with some really great essays. I've been on our committee reading these, and I'm always amazed at what students perform and what they say, and it's really hard to select only 4, but we have to. And so based off this, we have committees who do this. We have our member at large is our person who is the one in control of the scholarships. They cannot do it alone. We have anywhere from 60, usually between 60 and 70 submissions on scholarships, so it's impossible to read that many by yourself. So we do have committees with this. We usually ask for at least 4 to 5 people. Sometimes we get more people on the board who are willing to be part of this. But we try to give each person about 6 to 12 essays to read. It is the role of the member at large to go through all of the other paperwork and make sure that that is all there. The committees just read the essay, and they have a rubric that they go through. They do have all the other information when they need it, because the rubric looks at the essay, it looks at their reference letters, so you do look at those, their student ranking, their extracurricular and volunteer activities, and then their goals. And if there's a way to send out information, we're more than happy to share a rubric or any of this with anybody. If you're thinking of starting scholarships, we're very happy to share what we have so you can use or adapt as needed. But the way it works then is that each person gets about 6 to 12 essays and information to look over, and each person picks 2. From those 2, if you have 5 people, then you have a group of 10. And from those 10, then you select it down to 4, and those 4 are our winners. So that's basically how it works with our essays. And then with our timeline, timeline is very important because with high schools, we want to make sure that we notify the students before they have their congratulatory banquets and things in May or in June. So what we do is we start to work on this in January or maybe a little earlier. It's easier for us because basically we just copy every year and just change our dates as needed. But if you're starting it new, it might take you a little longer to build what you need. But around January, we publish the forms and we alert everyone at our conference in February that this is open and live and please start getting people to submit. And we collect submissions through the end of March or beginning of April. This year we did extend it through the end of April because of the schools closing their physical locations and going to online. We felt like we needed to open it up longer so that students were able to connect with whoever they needed to for this. And then usually around the start of April would be when our member at large would sort the submissions, go through, make sure everything's accurate. We usually have a board meeting at that time where we ask for committees, people who want to be on the committee, and then we disseminate the information. They have like 2 weeks maybe to read what they need to read and pick their decisions, and then send that back to the member at large. They come down up with the 10, they all read the last 10, and then they come up with the final 4 from the vote. And so then at the end of April, beginning of May is when we announce our winners. And we have a template that we use for a letter that we send to the counselor and to the student to let them know that they have been awarded this $1,000 scholarship. And then once we get the information about their acceptance into their university or college, then we send our payments out, usually in the summer. Usually by July or at the latest August, we send it in for the colleges to have their information. So then we also get the picture and a short bio of the student so that we can post the information on our website, and they are invited to our annual convention so that they can come and we congratulate them and give them free lunch and accolades and show them off in front of everybody that they're our big winners. So this is what we do. So we just want to say thank you for attending our session. And if you have questions, we still have like 20 minutes before technically it's all over. So you can either type them in the chat box or you can unmute yourself if you want to and ask them. But if you want to find us, myself or Katie anywhere, our Twitter handles are here and our email addresses as well if you have questions or want to see any of the documentation that we have. But I will stop sharing my screen in case.
I was tracking along in the chat, answering some questions throughout, so hopefully we got to everyone's questions, but if I missed one, please let me know.
Thank you so much. You did an outstanding job, both of you all.
That's a good question. Katie, you asked, when you award the scholarships, are there any tax considerations for the recipients? Not that I know of, but I'm also, I don't want to give a definitive answer because I don't know that that anyone has shared that there was a problem with that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't, but not that I know of. We write the check directly to the university that they're planning on attending, and it goes in directly to their funds. And so depending on what their financial aid situation is, you know, how that gets applied is up to the university. But as far as I know, that doesn't, that they get the full $1,000.
Right. Yes, I believe that is also true. We mark it as scholarship. We talked Sometimes it's the same universities over and over, so we kind of know how it works. But before we write the checks, we do reach out to the university to make, or college, to make sure that we are submitting it appropriately, because we want it to be designated as a scholarship. And we also make it available. They ask you, I don't know if they ask everywhere, but here they ask if you want it for the fall or the spring or both semesters. So we usually say over both semesters. If they need it, then they can hold on to it and just use it in the spring if they have enough to cover in the fall.
Deborah, that's a great question about whether a winner can go to community college. In my memory, I don't believe that we have had a winner that chose to go to a community college, but we would definitely be open to that for sure. I think it just so happens that all the ones that we have selected were heading to university instead. But I think that's, I don't think that has anything to do, we don't necessarily think about the university where they're attending when we're thinking about which one we're going to select. It's more on their academics and the essays that they put in and their recommendations.
Right, and that information is not shared with the committee, actually. The committee gets their transcript, they get their essay, they get the reference letters, they get only the relevant information. So they don't know their counselor's name, they don't know what school they came from unless they mention it within their essay itself. They don't have that information.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, we want to be mindful of our DACA students, obviously, as you mentioned. So yeah, we're open to giving the scholarship to anyone that is heading into higher ed in any form.
Oh, let me say that one way that we get the information out for our scholarships and also for our conference is that we have looked up the education service centers is what they're called in Texas. We look up the information of what school districts are part of each service center that we service. And then we also, it's a lot of legwork at first because you're doing it yourself. We're going and looking at, okay, who is the coordinator, the ELL coordinator of that, or who's in charge of that division, or trying to find somebody higher up, not just the individual teachers to email, because yes, they're important, but ultimately they're not the ones making the decision of funding. So we try to submit the information for the conferences to as high up as we can in the school districts. And then same thing when we have our conferences, or I'm sorry, our scholarships, once they're open, is we email our whole member board and our whole membership list. And then we also make sure that we go to our service center list and we email out to anybody who is specifically designated within the school districts that we service so that they have the information also.
The question about whether we do any fundraisers other than the conference, we haven't at this point. Our conference, because we have enough attendees, and especially those K-12 attendees help to bring in revenue. And so at the current level that we're at, where we have 4 $1,000 scholarships, we're able to maintain that based on our conference revenue alone. We went to a fabulous session. Was it, I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, Mary, where we heard about Arkansas TESOL had been partnering with Tyson Foods, I think, in fundraising. And so we thought, we were very inspired by that. So we thought, well, we're going to reach out and see if we can find a corporate partner like that as well. And so I had sent letters to several in the area, but we weren't able to get any takers. But that's definitely an area for the future that we would like to. We'd love to give more scholarships and more money per scholarship, or make them ongoing because right now it's just for their freshman year. We would love to be able to sponsor them all 4 or 5 years of college, but we don't have the means to do that right now. Anyone else?
Can you guys talk a little bit, when you're putting your conference together, what are the major costs for you?
It's a really good question, Joe, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the reasons why our conference is profitable, and I don't know if you spoke to this, Mary, is that we have cultivated university partners who are willing to donate the venue. And so we do not pay for a venue for our conferences. Instead, we have, and we in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have many universities. And so our most recent conference was at University of Texas at Arlington. And other than just paying for, we generally will pay for one kind of student worker who's there to run tech support for us. And then we have catering fees. But we try to use universities that don't require in-house catering. And we have some catering companies that offer nonprofit rates. They're very reasonable. And so catering is always our #1 expense. In our conference, we offer breakfast and lunch. But in terms of not having to pay for the venue space, that is a huge factor in us being able to fund these scholarships, because we're not having to pay for that.
Right. Yeah, I just want to add to that, because in 2018, we hosted the Texas State Conference. And so when we host state conference, obviously you have people coming from all over Texas, several hours drive. So they're spending the night. It's a 2-day conference. So you have it at a larger scale hotel that has convention space. And that's very expensive. Very, very expensive if you've never had to be part of that. Technology alone was like $30,000 or something insane. So coming off of that, we really wanted to keep it, be mindful of that and bring it back to our local colleges. We have lots of community colleges in the area or universities. So we did partner with UT Arlington, and they donated that area to us, and we just had to pay some minor fees for like linens and things. But still much better than technology in a hotel, because almost all, I would venture to say, colleges and universities have the technology in the classroom, so you don't have to pay to have that all set up for you. So it does save a lot of money as far as that goes. We're also very mindful of how large our affiliate region is. So sometimes we tend to have the conferences at somewhere where we have a partnership with. So we've had them closer to Dallas in a couple times. And then we also want to be mindful that not all of our people reside in Dallas. They all are in Fort Worth. So if you're not familiar with the area, we say Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Makes it sound a little teeny tiny. It's not. It's huge. Between the two is about a 45-minute to an hour drive, or longer sometimes. So we try to be mindful of where we have our conference at and pick places within our region, so that it's not always, oh great, we have to drive to downtown Dallas, or we have to drive to Fort Worth or wherever. So we try to be mindful of where we host it as well, so that all of our members feel that they're getting representation at some point and can kind of have a shorter commute to where they're going.
That's a good question.
Any other questions from the audience that you would like to ask Katie and Mary? I mean, I think they have your contact information, so if they have any other questions that they would like to ask, they can directly email you. I think it was a great presentation. Thank you very much for sharing all this information with us.
Excellent.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. All right, so thanks everyone for attending today. If I can just ask you to complete, I'm gonna just put the link on the chat for the survey. It's for 3 days, but please rate the ones that you attended today, so you don't forget the end of tomorrow. And also the document I showed earlier, the Google Drive, that you can find all information about the affiliate network and the ANPC and all the calls we have. I'm going to share it again. And finally, go quickly through our sessions tomorrow. All right.
Excuse me, sir. The survey link is not working. Could you please send it via email? This is
Yeah,
Hamis.
Hamis.
Yes,
Okay, Hamis, yeah, sure.
I tried it many
I think-
times, but it doesn't work. I don't know.
It's working. It's opening. Maybe it's not opening the phone.
Yeah.
I'm using it from cell phone, so maybe something wrong with the telephone. So please send via email. I can do it from my
Sure.
laptop. Yeah.
I think
Sorry
Jim is
for
taking
interrupting.
care of that. No, no problem. All right, and lastly, so tomorrow we start at 5 Eastern, which is going to be midnight for some of us, with a session about engagement of student members for association by Nikki Ashraf. We're going to continue with the last batch of intersection presentations. We're going to have the reading and vocabulary intersection, which is one of the newest intersections. And the two Thomases are going to be joining in from Japan in the morning, teacher education intersection, second language writing intersection, social responsibility intersection, and the pre-K through 12 intersection. We're going to move on with sound affiliate leadership roles and responsibilities with Alex Monceau, Lindsay Heron from Korea, Larissa Lisova, Anna Maria, and Cynthia. Then we have conversations on diversity and inclusion, and we're going to have the TESOL's Diverse Voices Task Force joining us tomorrow for a discussion with them. We're going to have creative interactive slides and how to use some fascinating software from Todd Beckens, again, joining us from Japan. And we're going to have a closing event with a little bit of discussion feedback. So that will be 10:30 to 11 Eastern. I know it's a little bit late, but it will be different time zones. We try to cater the last day for all our affiliates in Southeastern Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Korea. Right, without further ado, thank you very much for participating today. I think you have, I hope you have enjoyed. We hope to see you tomorrow. As mentioned, all the recordings are going to be uploaded on our YouTube channel of TESOL International under the playlist of the affiliate network. Again, thank you very much for participating. The TESOL board members, Okone Fiong, which I forgot earlier, I'm sorry. Deborah Short, Joe McVeigh, Kathy Lobo, and I'm still forgetting one. Gracia, I made it. And all the ANPC members that were here today, Jim, Alex, Jermaine, VSJ, Sherlyn, Bessie, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Lynn, that had to go. It was, I think, a very, very good and productive day. I hope to see all of you together. Have a good evening, good night, good morning, all of those. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.